Ta wiped sweat from his forehead as he walked through the ruins on planet Hazen. The sun beat down on his back. Tall stone walls rose around him, cracked and covered with strange plants. He had been mapping this area for 3 days now. "This place is much bigger than we thought," Ta said into his recorder. He touched the old walls with his gloved hand. The stones felt warm. Ta was 32 years old and had studied old alien buildings for 10 years. His black hair was cut short, and his dark eyes missed nothing. The company he worked for sent him to find out if humans could build a colony here. "Jin, I'm going to check out what looks like a temple," he said into his radio. "It's about half a mile east of base camp." Jin's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Be careful, Tai. Remember to keep your safety line attached." "Always do," he replied with a smile. The temple stood on a small hill. Its round dome was broken on one side. Strange writing covered its walls. Ta took pictures and sent them back to base camp. He hooked his safety line to a strong piece of stone and stepped inside. Beams of light shone through holes in the ceiling. Dust floated in the air. Ta turned on his light and moved forward slowly. The floor was made of large stone tiles with more writing on them. "This isn't like the other buildings," he said into his recorder. "The writing is different, and the layout isn't like any temple I've seen before." He stepped carefully, testing each tile before putting his weight on it. His scanner showed the room was much bigger than it looked. There must be more underground. Ta stopped in the middle of the room. A large circle was carved into the floor with 7 symbols around it. He knelt down to take a closer look. "These symbols matched the star chart we found yesterday," he said excitedly. "I think this might be." The floor shifted under his knees. A low rumble filled the air. Cracks spread across the circle like spider webs. "Ta, what's happening?" Jin's voice was full of worry. "The floor is." Before he could finish, the circle collapsed. Ta fell into darkness. His safety line went tight, then snapped with a sharp crack. He tumbled down, hitting the sides of a shaft. His light spun wildly, showing glimpses of strange metal and stone. Ta hit something hard, and everything went black. When he opened his eyes, his head hurt badly. He lay on a smooth floor that glowed with a faint blue light. Ta tried to sit up and pain shot through his left arm. "Probably broken," he muttered, checking his equipment. His radio was crushed. His emergency beacon still worked, but the signal meter showed 0 bars. Ta looked around. He was in a small room with smooth walls. It wasn't made of stone like the ruins above. This room was made of some kind of metal he didn't recognize. "This is not a temple," he said quietly. He stood up carefully and examined the room. No doors were visible, but one wall had a different texture. Tai ran his hand along it and jumped back when lines of light appeared under his fingers. The lines spread, forming a door shape. With a soft hiss, the wall slid open. Ta stood at the entrance to a long hallway that curved out of sight. More blue light came from the walls. The air smelled clean and fresh, not old and dusty like it should after thousands of years. "What is this place?" he whispered. Something hummed in the distance. Machines were running somewhere. Tai checked his water and food supplies. He had enough for 2 days. Jin would look for him when he didn't return, but she wouldn't know where he had fallen. He had to find another way out. Ta stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind him with a click. More lights came on ahead, as if showing him the way. He walked forward slowly, his footsteps echoing. On the walls, strange symbols glowed. They looked like the writing from above, but these moved and changed as he passed. At the end of the hallway stood a large round platform with a console in its center. Tai approached it carefully. The console lit up as he got closer. Shapes that looked like buttons covered its surface. "Don't touch anything you don't understand," he reminded himself. But as he leaned in for a closer look, his hand brushed against the console. The whole room came to life around him. The console lit up with bright colors. A beam of light shot up from its center and formed a shape in the air. Ta stepped back quickly, his heart racing. The light took the form of a person. Not human, but similar. It had a tall, thin body with 4 arms and a smooth face with large eyes. The figure looked at Ta with interest. "Scanning life form," said a calm voice that seemed to come from all around. "Human. Male. DNA pattern recognized." Ta couldn't speak. He stood frozen as the light figure looked him over. "Welcome, Inheritor," the figure said at last. "I am Warden Du. This facility has been dormant for 53,142 years. Your arrival has triggered the awakening protocol." "What is this place?" Tai asked, finding his voice. "I thought it was a temple." The figure made a sound like soft laughter. "Not a temple. A prison. The most secure prison ever built by the Shapers." "Prison?" Ta looked around with new eyes. "Who were the prisoners?" "Those who dared to dream beyond their master's design," Du replied. "But that is a long story. More important now is your safety. You are injured." Ta nodded, holding his broken arm. "I need to get back to my team. They'll be looking for me." "No signal can penetrate these walls," Du said. "This facility was built to contain beings who could bend reality itself. Your primitive communication devices are useless here." The word primitive stung Ta's pride. "Our technology is advanced enough to reach the stars." "Yes," Du said, tilting its head. "Impressive for your species, but you have only begun your journey." A panel opened in the wall, revealing a small room with a bed-like platform. "Please enter the medical chamber. I can repair your injuries." Ta hesitated. "How do I know I can trust you?" "You cannot know," Du said simply. "But your options are limited. Your arm is broken in 2 places. You have internal bleeding. Without treatment, you will die before your team finds you." Ta knew Du was right. Reluctantly, he entered the small room and lay down on the platform. A clear cover slid over him. "This will not hurt," Du said. "Sleep now." A sweet smell filled the chamber. Ta felt his eyes grow heavy. As he drifted off, he heard Du say, "When you wake, I will tell you why you are here, Inheritor." Meanwhile, above ground, Jin paced around the base camp. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. "Ta should have been back hours ago." "Any response on the radio?" she asked the communications officer. "Nothing," said the young man. "His beacon isn't showing up either." Jin looked at the temple on the hill. "Get the search team ready. We leave in 10 minutes." As the team gathered their equipment, a loud boom echoed across the ruins. The ground shook. Jin watched in horror as the temple collapsed into itself, leaving a large hole. "Move, now," she shouted, running toward the hill. Ta was in there. Tai opened his eyes. The cover had retracted, and he sat up quickly. His arm felt fine. He moved it around, surprised to find no pain. The treatment was successful, Du said, the light figure appearing again. "Your body accepted the healing process better than expected. This confirms my analysis." "What analysis?" Tai asked, standing up. "Your DNA contains shaper markers," Du said. "You are a descendant of those who were modified by the prisoners here." "Modified? What does that mean?" Du gestured for Tai to follow. They walked down a long hallway to a large room with walls covered in moving images and strange writing. In the center stood a holographic display of the galaxy. "To understand, you must first learn who the Shapers were," Du said, pointing to a star system that glowed brighter than the others. "They arose on this world 10 million years ago. They became masters of genetic manipulation and reality engineering." Du waved a hand, and the display changed to show beings like the light figure. They spread across the galaxy, shaping worlds to their liking. But some believed their knowledge should be shared with younger species. The display showed Earth, a young planet with primitive humans walking across grassy plains. "Those Shapers who tried to help humans were captured and imprisoned here," Du continued. but not before they had hidden their greatest knowledge. Du turned to Ta, its eyes glowing brighter. They hid it in your ancestors' DNA, waiting for the right time to awaken. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the facility. Du looked up, concerned. "We have a problem," the warden said. "Something is trying to break in from above." "Your people are persistent," Du said, looking at a screen that showed Jin and her team digging at the collapsed temple. "But they cannot break through the main barriers." "Those are my friends," Ta said. "They're trying to save me." "They will only harm themselves," Du replied. "We must move deeper into the facility until I can secure the upper levels." Ta followed Du through more hallways. They passed rooms with strange machines and empty cells with clear walls. Everything was clean and looked new, despite being thousands of years old. "How many prisoners were kept here?" Tai asked. 27 Shapers, Du answered. "The greatest minds of their time. They were not criminals as you would understand them. They were visionaries who broke the highest law of their kind. Never help lesser species evolve too quickly." They entered a large round room with tall shelves full of glowing objects that looked like crystals. Each crystal gave off a different colored light. "This is the archive," Du said. "Each crystal contains the memories and knowledge of one prisoner." Ta stepped closer to a blue crystal. "May I?" "Yes, touch it. It was meant for you." Ta carefully placed his hand on the crystal. It felt warm. Suddenly, his mind filled with images and words he didn't understand. He saw a tall shaper standing before a group of early humans. The shaper was teaching them to make fire and tools. The humans looked at the shaper with wonder and fear. More images flashed through Ta's mind. Shapers giving medicines to sick humans, teaching them farming, showing them the stars. Then he saw other shapers arriving, angry and powerful. They captured the helpful ones and took them away. Ta pulled his hand back, breathing hard. Those stories, they're in human myths. Gods who brought knowledge to mankind. Prometheus bringing fire. "Yes," Du said. "Many of your myths about gods and angels were based on the shapers who visited Earth. The prisoners encoded their knowledge into human DNA, to be unlocked gradually as you evolved." Du pointed to Ta. "Your natural talent for understanding alien technology is no accident. The genetic key they planted is strong in you. That is why you could activate this facility when no one else could for 50,000 years." A new alarm sounded, different from the first. Du looked concerned. "What now?" Tai asked. "Something is happening in the deep storage section," Du said. "Follow me quickly." They hurried through the archives and down a spiral ramp. The walls here were darker, made of a material that seemed to absorb light. They reached a heavy door that slid open as they approached. Inside was a room with a single stasis pod in the center. The pod was glowing, and displays around it flashed with warnings. "This should not be possible," Du said, rushing to the controls. "The revival process has begun." "Revival? Someone's alive in there?" Tai asked, moving closer to the pod. Inside, he could see a figure floating in clear liquid. Not someone. Han, the last prisoner, the most dangerous of all. Du worked the controls frantically. "Your presence must have triggered the release protocol." "Dangerous how? Will he hurt us?" Du looked at Ta. "Not with violence." Han was imprisoned because he believed humans could surpass even the Shapers. He created a way to merge Shaper knowledge with human potential. The other Shapers feared what might happen. The pod hummed louder. The liquid inside began to drain. "I cannot stop the process now," Du said. "Han will awaken soon, after 50,000 years of sleep." Ta stared at the figure in the pod. "What will he do when he wakes up?" "I do not know," Du admitted. "But he created the genetic modifications in your ancestors. You are, in a way, his child." The pod opened with a hiss of cool air. The figure inside took a deep breath. His eyes remained closed, but his fingers moved slightly. "He is sensing the environment," Du explained, preparing his body to wake fully. Tad leaned closer. Han looked almost human, but his skin had a slight blue tint, and his features were sharper, more defined. Han's eyes opened suddenly, bright gold with vertical pupils. He looked directly at Ta. "Hello," Han said in a voice that sounded like music. "I have been waiting for you for a very long time." Han sat up slowly in the pod. His movements were careful, like someone testing if they could still walk after a long time in bed. He looked around the room with his strange golden eyes. "The prison still stands," Han said. His voice was stronger now. "And you, Warden Du, still guard it faithfully." "It is my purpose," Du replied. "Though all other prisoners are gone." Han turned to Ta. "But you are new. Human, but carrying the seed I planted." He smiled. "Tell me your name." "I'm Ta. I'm a xenorchaeologist. I study alien ruins." Han nodded. "And you found this place by accident?" "Yes. The floor of a temple above collapsed under me." "Not accident," Han said, shaking his head. "Design. The entrance would only open for someone with the right DNA. Someone like you." Han stood up. He was tall, almost 7 feet, but very thin. He wore a simple white suit that seemed to move with him like a second skin. "How long have I slept?" Han asked Du. 50,317 years, Du answered. Han closed his eyes briefly. "So long. And humanity, how far have they come?" Tai spoke up. "We've spread to about 50 star systems. We have faster than light travel. We're still learning, but 50 systems." Han seemed surprised. "In 50,000 years. The growth is slower than I hoped." "There were setbacks," Ta said. "Wars, disasters, times when we almost destroyed ourselves." Han walked slowly around the room, touching the walls. "Without guidance, yes. The knowledge was meant to come gradually, but not this slowly." He turned to Ta. "Show me your world now. Your technology." Todd pulled out his tablet, which had survived the fall. He showed Han pictures of Earth cities, spaceships, and colonies on other worlds. Han studied everything with great interest. "Remarkable. Different paths than I expected, but still." He looked at Ta with pride. "You have done well, despite everything." Suddenly, the room shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. "Your friends are using mining equipment," Du said, checking a screen. "They have breached the outer shell. If they keep digging, they could damage important systems," Han said with concern. "They must be stopped." "I'll talk to them," Ta said, "if I can get to the surface." "Impossible," Du replied. "The upper levels are sealed, and there is another problem." The warden pointed to a different screen. "A Shaper Sentinel ship has been alerted to activity here. It is coming to investigate." "A Sentinel?" Han's face showed fear for the first time. "After all this time, they still guard." "What's a Sentinel?" Tai asked. "Automated ships," Han explained. "Programmed to ensure no prisoner ever escapes. They will destroy this entire planet rather than risk that." Tai felt cold. "My friends, everyone on the surface. How long until it arrives?" Han asked Du. 6 hours, the warden answered. Han took a deep breath. "Then we have little time. Tai, you must help me access the core systems of this prison. There might be a way to stop the Sentinel." "Why should I trust you?" Tai asked. "Du said you were the most dangerous prisoner." Han smiled sadly. "Dangerous to the Shaper's pride, perhaps. My crime was believing that humans could be more than what the Shapers allowed." He held out his 4-fingered hand. "I gave your ancestors gifts. Now I offer you the same choice they had. Trust me and learn what you can truly become, or reject me and face the Sentinel alone." Du interrupted. "There is a third option." The warden's light figure flickered. "The awakening protocol Han created. It could accelerate your potential, Tai. Activate the dormant Shaper knowledge in your DNA." "Is that possible?" Tai asked. Yes, Han said, but it is dangerous. Your mind might not survive the rush of information, and even if it does, you will no longer be fully human. What would I be then? Tai asked quietly. Han's golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. Something new, something both human and shaper, something the universe has never seen before. Above them, the ceiling shook again as Jin's team continued to dig. Time was running out. Tai looked from Han to Du, then at the shaking ceiling. He needed to make a choice. I'll do it, he said finally. I'll try the awakening. Han nodded. Brave choice. Follow me. They left the stasis room and went down another hallway. This one had symbols on the walls that glowed brighter as they passed. The shapers who helped humans were not all caught. Han explained as they walked. Some escaped and hid among the stars. Others died fighting. What happened to the rest of the shapers? Tai asked. They destroyed themselves, Han said sadly. Those who wanted to control other species fought those who believed in working together. Their war tore their civilization apart. They entered a round room with a chair in the center. The chair had strange devices attached to it. It looked like something between a throne and a medical station. This is where we will awaken your potential, Han said. Du, prepare the systems. Du's light figure moved to a control panel. Beginning preparation sequence. Tai, please sit. Tai sat in the chair. It was surprisingly comfortable. Metal bands gently wrapped around his wrists and ankles. These will keep you safe during the process, Han explained. The awakening can cause strong body movements. Will it hurt? Tai asked. Yes, Han said honestly, but pain leads to growth. Han placed a thin metal band around Tai's head. This will guide the process. Focus on staying calm. Your mind will want to fight the new information. What exactly will happen to me? Tai asked, his mouth dry with fear. The knowledge hidden in your DNA will activate, Han said. Neural pathways in your brain will expand. You will understand things that seemed impossible before. Du spoke up. The Sentinel ship has increased speed, now arriving in 5 hours. We must begin, Han said. He looked at Tai with serious eyes. Are you ready? Tai thought of Jin and his friends digging above. He thought of all the people on the planet who would die if the Sentinel ship arrived. I'm ready, he said. Han touched a control on the chair. Then let us awaken what has slept for too long. Pain shot through Tai's body like lightning. He tried not to scream but couldn't help it. His mind filled with strange images and words in languages he didn't know. Stars and planets flashed behind his eyes. Equations and symbols burned into his thoughts. Through the pain, Tai heard Han speaking. Fight through it. Accept the knowledge. Let it become part of you. The pain grew worse. Tai felt like his head would explode. Then suddenly, everything changed. The pain became a warm feeling that spread through his body. The strange images began to make sense. The unknown languages became clear as his own. Tai gasped as new understanding filled his mind. He could see how the prison systems worked. He knew how the Shapers had built their technology. Most importantly, he could feel the connections between his human side and the Shaper knowledge. The bands around his wrists and ankles released. The metal band on his head retracted. Tai opened his eyes. Han was watching him closely. How do you feel? Different, Tai said. His voice sounded the same, but he felt the words differently. I can see everything, how it all connects. He stood up. The room seemed sharper, more detailed. He could sense the energy flowing through the walls. I need to contact Jin, Tai said. I know how to do it now. He walked to a control panel and placed his hands on it. The system responded to his touch, opening channels he shouldn't have known about. Jin, he said, and his voice carried to the surface. Jin, can you hear me? Through the prison's systems, he heard her surprised reply. Tai, where are you? How are you talking to us? I'm deep underground. Stop digging. You're going to break through into dangerous systems. We're trying to rescue you. I know, but there's a bigger problem. A ship is coming that will destroy the planet. I need you to take shelter. I'm working on a plan. Han watched Ta with pride. You adapted faster than I expected. The human mind is truly remarkable. The Sentinel is still coming, Du reminded them. Now we need to prepare our defense. Tay turned from the panel. His eyes now had a slight golden glow, like Han's. I have an idea, he said. But first, I need to understand exactly what we're facing. Show me the Sentinel, Ta said to Du. The Warden created a display in the air. A ship appeared, moving fast through space. It was shaped like a long needle with rings around it. All Shaper Sentinels follow strict rules, Han explained. First, they scan for escaped prisoners. Then they contain any threat. If they cannot contain, they destroy. How powerful is it? Tai asked. It can turn this entire planet to ash, Han said grimly. Ta closed his eyes, thinking. With his new mind, he could see problems and solutions much faster than before. We have 3 tasks, he said, opening his eyes. Protect the people on the surface, stop the Sentinel, and find a way out of here. A loud boom shook the facility. Alarms blared again. Your friends have broken through the second barrier, Du reported. They are persistent. Too persistent, Han said. They've triggered the defense systems. On another display, they saw robot guards activating in the upper levels. The robots looked like metal spiders with glowing red eyes. Those will kill Jin and her team, Ta said with worry. I can control them now, Tay realized. He placed his hands on the console and sent new commands. The robots stopped moving toward Jin's team. Impressive, Han said. You learn quickly. The Sentinel has launched smaller ships, Du warned. They will land on the surface in 20 minutes. Ta knew he needed a better plan. He touched more controls, bringing up maps of the prison. Han, can you leave this facility? He asked. Han shook his head. No. After 50,000 years in stasis, my body depends on the special environment here. I would die within minutes outside. Tai thought for a moment. Then we fight from here. Du, can we use the prison's defenses against the Sentinel? Some systems are still working, Du answered. But they were designed to keep things in, not out. We can change that, Ta said. Show me the power core. A new map appeared, showing a massive energy source deep below them. I'll need to go there, Ta said. And I need to talk to Jin again. He reopened the communication channel. Jin, are you there? Ta. Those robot things almost killed us. Jin's voice was shaking. I stopped them, Tai explained. Listen carefully. Small ships are about to land near you. They're hunting for anything that might have escaped from this facility. What are you talking about? What facility? The temple wasn't a temple. It's a prison built by aliens called Shapers. I know this sounds crazy, but you need to hide. There was silence. Then Jin spoke again. Your voice sounds different, Ta. What happened to you down there? Ta hesitated. I've changed. I understand things now, but I'm still me, and I'm trying to save everyone. Another alarm sounded. The displays showed small ships entering the planet's atmosphere. They're coming, Han said. The Sentinels will scan everything on the surface. Jin, Ta said urgently, take your equipment and go into the caves we mapped yesterday. The rocks will hide you from their scans. Okay, Jin replied. But Tai, we're coming back for you. I know. Now go. Tai turned to Han. I need you to teach me how to reprogram the power core. I think we can create a pulse that will disable the Sentinel ships. That could work, Han said, looking impressed. But channeling that much power is dangerous. It might collapse parts of the prison. Better than letting the Sentinel destroy the whole planet, Tai argued. Han nodded. True. I will show you. As they prepared to leave for the power core, Du's light figure flickered with alarm. The main Sentinel ship has changed course, the warden reported. It's accelerating. New arrival time. 3 hours. Why is it moving faster? Tai asked. It must have detected your awakening, Han said gravely. A human with Shaper abilities is exactly what it was programmed to prevent. Tai felt the weight of responsibility press down on him. The Sentinel wasn't just coming for Han anymore. It was coming for him too. Then we'd better hurry, he said, moving toward the door. The hunt has begun. Tai and Han hurried through the prison's deep levels. They passed rooms filled with strange machines and empty cells. As they walked, Han taught Tai more about Shaper technology. The power core uses energy from between spaces, Han explained. Places that exist between stars. Dark energy? Tai asked, his new mind making connections. Yes, that is what humans call it, Han nodded. The Shapers learned to collect and use it. They reached a heavy door marked with warning symbols. Tai could read them now. Danger. Cori exetes. The door opened to a vast round chamber. In the center floated a ball of swirling dark purple energy, contained by rings of light. The room hummed with power. This has been running for over 50,000 years, Ta said in awe. Shaper engineering was meant to last, Han replied. Now we need to redirect its output. They approached the control station. Han showed Ta how to access the deep systems. Tai's fingers moved across the controls, his new knowledge guiding him. I can create a pulse that will disable electronic systems, Ta said. But how do we target only the Sentinels and not harm Jin's team? The pulse must be tuned to Shaper technology frequencies, Han said. Your human devices operate differently. As they worked, Du's voice came through the speakers. The Sentinel has launched more ships. They are searching the surface systematically. We need to work faster, Ta said. His mind raced through calculations and possibilities. Wait, I have another idea. Tai's hands flew over the controls. We can use the prison's communication system to reach Jin's equipment. I can send a program to help them hide from scans. He sent a series of code through the prison systems. This should mask their electronic signatures. Clever thinking, Han said with pride. You combine human creativity with Shaper knowledge in ways I had hoped for. Suddenly, the room shook violently. Pieces of ceiling fell around them. The Sentinels have found the prison entrance, Du reported. They are attempting to burn through the outer defenses. Ta continued working on the power core controls. Almost ready. I need to balance the energy flow, or it could explode. The shaking grew worse. Warning lights flashed around the room. Ta, Han said urgently, there is something you should know. When the pulse activates, it will damage parts of this facility. The damage might trap you here permanently. Todd paused. So I have to choose between saving everyone on the surface or saving myself. There might be another way, Han said. A complete transformation. What do you mean? The awakening we did was only partial, Han explained. A full transformation would give you enough power to control the pulse precisely. You could protect both the prison and the surface. But what? You would become even less human, Han said softly. More like me. The change would be permanent. Tai thought about his life before falling into the prison. His work, his friends, his plans for the future. Then he thought about Jin and all the people who would die if he failed. Do it, Tai decided. Complete the transformation. Han nodded and adjusted controls on a panel next to them. This will be more intense than before. Are you sure? Yes. Han activated the process. Energy from the core flowed into the panel and then into Ta. This time, there was no pain. Instead, Ta felt his body changing. His skin took on a slight blue tint like Han's. His eyes glowed brighter gold. His mind expanded even further, seeing connections between all things. When it ended, Ta stood taller. He felt stronger, different. How do you feel? Han asked. Complete, Tai answered. His voice had a musical quality now, like Han's. I understand everything. Tay turned to the core controls. What seemed complex before was now simple. He saw exactly how to create the pulse and protect both the prison and the surface. As his hands moved over the controls, perfecting the program, he spoke to Han. This is what you wanted all along, isn't it? Not just to help humans, but to create something new. Something beyond both human and Shaper. Han smiled. It was my hope. The reason I was imprisoned. The facility shook again as the Sentinels continued their attack. It's time, Ta said, his golden eyes glowing with power. Let's show them what humanity can become. Ta stood before the power core, his transformed body glowing with energy. He could feel the Sentinel ships getting closer. Their weapons were powerful enough to break through even the prison's strong walls. The main Sentinel is now in orbit, Du announced. It is preparing its primary weapon. What does that weapon do? Tai asked, still working on the controls. It will burn away the planet's atmosphere. Han explained. Nothing will survive. Ta nodded. Then we strike first. He finished the final commands and looked at Han. I'm ready. The pulse will travel through the prison systems first, Han warned. It will reach the surface defenses, then extend into orbit to hit the Sentinels. What about you? Tai asked. Will it hurt you? Han smiled sadly. I have been here too long. My body is too connected to these systems. Yes, it will hurt me, perhaps fatally. No, Ta said firmly. I've adjusted the frequency. You'll be protected. Han looked surprised. You thought of that, even while calculating everything else. Human compassion with Shaper knowledge, Ta said, repeating Han's earlier words. A massive explosion rocked the facility. Alarms blared everywhere. They've breached the outer defenses, Du reported. Sentinel units are entering the prison. On the display screens, they could see robot soldiers moving through the upper levels. They looked like tall metal humans with no faces, just glowing red sensors where eyes should be. Their orders are simple, Han said. Find and destroy all prisoners and anyone with Shaper modifications. That means you and me, Ta said. Yes, we must activate the pulse now. Ta placed his hands on the final control. Du, contact Jin one more time. Connection open, Du said. Jin, this is Ta. I'm about to send a pulse that will disable the alien ships. Stay in the caves. Don't come out until I contact you again. Ta, you sound different, Jin replied. What's happening to you? I had to change to save everyone. I'll explain later. Just stay safe. Sentinel units approaching the core level, Du warned. 2 minutes until they reach us. Tay took a deep breath. Activating now. He pressed the control. The power core glowed brighter, pulsing with energy. The lights in the facility flickered. Waves of purple energy spread outward through the walls. First wave successful, Du reported. Prison systems protected. Surface defenses responding. The display showed the Sentinel units freezing in place as the pulse hit them. Their red sensors went dark. Surface pulse deploying, Du continued. Sentinel ships losing power. Success. Ta smiled. And the main Sentinel. There was a pause. Main Sentinel damage, but still operational. It is moving into firing position. Tay's smile faded. What? That shouldn't be possible. The main Sentinel has older technology, Han explained. More resistant to our pulse. The facility shook again as the Sentinel fired a warning shot at the planet's surface. It's targeting the prison directly, Du said. Next shot will penetrate to the core. Han moved to another control panel. There is one option left. A feedback loop through the prison's power systems. What will that do? Tai asked. It will send our energy back into the Sentinel when it fires, overloading its systems. Han's fingers moved over the controls. But someone must stay here to manage the flow. Tai understood immediately. I'll do it. No, Han said firmly. This is my purpose. I've waited 50,000 years for humans to reach their potential. You are proof that I was right." He looked at Todd with pride. "You must survive to help your people grow." Before Ty could argue, Han pushed him toward the door. "Go. Find Jin. Build the future I always believed was possible." "There's no time to reach the surface," Ta protested. "Du will show you another way," Han said. "Now go." The facility shook again as the Sentinel moved into its final position. 10 seconds to main weapon fire, Du warned. Han turned back to the controls. "Goodbye, Ta. Remember what you have become." As Tai ran from the room, he looked back one last time. Han stood tall before the power core, his hands dancing across the controls, ready to meet his destiny. Tai ran through the corridors of the prison, following Du's guidance. Behind him, he felt a massive surge of energy as Han activated the feedback loop. The whole facility shook violently. Walls cracked. Lights flickered and went out. Ta could sense what was happening. The Sentinel had fired its main weapon, and Han was sending that energy back to destroy it. "This way," Du's voice directed him. "There is an emergency exit tunnel ahead." Tay reached a small door that opened into a narrow passage. "Will this reach the surface?" Yes, it was designed as an escape route for the prison staff. As Ty entered the tunnel, a final massive explosion rocked the facility. The force knocked him off his feet. "Han," Ta whispered. He could feel that Han was gone. The Shaper had given his life to stop the Sentinel. "The Sentinel has been destroyed," Du confirmed. Han's plan worked. Ta stood up and continued through the tunnel. His new senses told him the prison was badly damaged, but still intact deep underground. Most of its knowledge and technology remained safe. The tunnel sloped upward, leading him toward daylight. After climbing for what seemed like hours, Tay reached a hidden door. It opened onto the surface, far from the original temple entrance. The sky above was clear and blue. In the distance, he could see smoke rising from where the Sentinel ships had crashed. But there was no sign of the main Sentinel in orbit. Han had succeeded. Tai activated the communication device he had taken from the prison. "Jin, can you hear me? The threat is gone. You can come out now." After a moment, Jin's voice responded. "Ta, where are you?" "We felt a huge explosion. I'll send you my location. Meet me here." While waiting, Todd looked at his reflection in a small pool of water. His skin had the faint blue tint of a Shaper. His eyes glowed golden. He was neither fully human nor Shaper, but something new, exactly what Han had hoped to create. An hour later, Jin and her team found him. They stopped at a distance, shocked by his appearance. "Ta," Jin asked cautiously, "is that really you?" "Yes and no," Tai answered honestly. "I've changed. I had to save everyone." Jin stepped closer, studying him. "What happened down there?" Tai told them a simplified version of the story, about the prison, the Shapers, and Han's sacrifice. He explained how the Shapers had put knowledge into human DNA long ago. "Han believed humans could become more than we are," Ta said. "He was imprisoned for trying to help us. And now you're—" "What exactly?" Jin asked. "A bridge between human and Shaper," Ta said. "I carry all the knowledge Han wanted to share with humanity." Jin reached out and touched his arm, making sure he was real. "Will you come back with us?" Tai thought carefully. He had all of Han's knowledge now. He understood technologies that could change human civilization overnight. But he also had Han's wisdom about how fast change should happen. "Yes," he said, "but we need to be careful with what we found. The prison holds knowledge that could help humanity, but if it comes too quickly, it might harm us." "What do you mean?" Han and the other rebel Shapers wanted to guide humanity, not control us. They believed we should grow at our own pace. As they walked back to the base camp, Ta noticed something interesting. When he looked closely at Jin, he could see a faint genetic pattern, similar to his own before his transformation. She also carried the Shaper modifications. "Jin, he said quietly. You might be able to understand this knowledge too. You carried the same markers I did. Jin looked surprised. Me? How? Many humans do. The gift the Shapers gave wasn't just for a few. It was for all of us, when we're ready. Ta looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. He thought of Han's last words. Remember what you have become. The prison wasn't just a place to keep people locked away, Ta said. It was protecting a gift until we were ready to receive it. Jin stood beside him, watching the stars. What happens now? Ta smiled. Now we build the future, together.